Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio, a program that values the potential of knowledge, collaboration, and growth. The show is hosted by Denise Griffitts, who is known as an intensely curious nerd in stilettos. Each Wednesday, she is joined by co-host Ben Gay III, a renowned figure in the sales world. Ben is recognized for introducing The Closers, one of the most popular and powerful sales training materials ever produced. Having been mentored by Dr. Napoleon Hill himself, Ben has gained a wealth of knowledge in sales and life. Throughout the show, Denise and Ben delve into the world of sales, entrepreneurship, and success, exploring Ben's vast experience from guiding and mentoring countless professionals to achieve unparalleled success in their careers. Together, they offer unmatched guidance to listeners seeking success in their professional endeavors.
Good morning and welcome to the latest episode of the Closers Inner Circle podcast with Ben Gay III and Denise Griffitts, and it's hosted by Your Partner in Success Radio. Now, this is where we unravel the complex dynamics between conditions and objections in the world of sales. And we're always taking a deep dive into the reality that even the most seasoned sales professionals can't close. So Ben joins me, and that's actually from last week. So listen to what I was saying there, because I'll mention that again in a minute. So Ben joins me each Wednesday where we discuss sales mastery and honestly anything else that crosses our minds. So today we're working from Ben's famous sales books, the Sales Bibles actually. And we worked last week from Closers Part 2, page 101, titled Conditions versus Objections. I got a little ahead of myself. But today, and I'm sorry, it wasn't last week, it was 2 weeks ago because we weren't here last week. It was Thanksgiving. I think we're all still clutching our tummies and groaning. But today we are working from the Closers Part 2, page 199, Gigi's Plan A and Plan B interview. So here's the thing. In the world of sales, where success hinges on effective communication and strategic thinking, having a Plan A and a Plan B sales qualification script it's a game changer. And Ben talks a lot about scripts. We talk a lot about these during these Wednesday chats that we have. So these scripts not only empower sales professionals to navigate conversations with confidence, but they also ensure that time, that most precious resource, is used judiciously for both parties involved. And as the saying goes, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And in sales, a well-prepared script can make all the difference between a missed opportunity and a closed deal. So let's talk a bit about Plan A. That's precision in each pitch, every single pitch. Crafted for the ideal scenario, Plan A delves into prospects' needs, challenges, and desires, enabling a tailored pitch that builds rapport and increases the likelihood of a successful deal. Then we get to Plan B, which is agile adaptation for success. In the unpredictable world of sales, and we know it's unpredictable, Plan B equips sales professionals to handle unexpected objections, showcasing resilience and flexibility. It's so important. The key advantage, after all that chat, my point is the key advantage lies in time efficiency. Excuse me. A streamlined process quickly identifies qualified leads, and it respects both the seller's and the buyer's time. And for those of you who are wondering who Gigi is, she is Ben's wife and an entrepreneur in her own right. Ben, good morning. Happy Thanksgiving, belatedly. So it's good to hear your voice. I've missed you.
Yeah, I've went through withdrawal last week. Wednesday came, I felt like there's something missing here, and it was our show.
I did the same. I kept looking at my schedule going, I know I'm supposed to be doing something right now.
Yeah, it's become a part of my regular routine. I still write it on the calendar and yellow highlight it and so on, but I don't need to. I don't need to look at my calendar to know that I'm not doing anything else at the appointed hour on a Wednesday. And so I write it down. I think this is sort of silly, but Dr. Hill told me to write it down anyway. And so I still do it. But it was really weird when 10 o'clock came around a week ago morning. And you and I weren't going to be on the show.
And now I actually started to text you, and I thought, no, we're off today. Leave the man alone. So, it was hard, though. It was difficult.
Good to
But
have you back, and
yeah,
I
thank
hope
you.
you had a good Thanksgiving, as did we. And I told you before we got on, we went to a restaurant, so didn't have to buy groceries. Didn't have to. Gigi didn't have to cook. I didn't have to pretend to help, and I didn't have to clean up. So, although it was a little pricey, frankly, I thought, well, would you rather be home cooking and cleaning? I thought, no, this will be good.
I
We'll go with
cooked.
this.
I cooked for 3 days, but I love Thanksgiving. Look, I love all the holidays. November, October, November, December, that's my time of year. And people say, oh, why you're not going to have a big crowd this year. Why are you going to cook it? But I started thinking about that and I realized that there's so much nostalgia for most women in
Yeah.
particular. And I started polling my female friends. I said, are you noticing or have you recognized that you basically cook the same meal that your mama cooked back in the day? And we all went, yeah, we do, with very few variations. So there's a lot of nostalgia there.
Well, if I
I
did
did.
that, I would heat up Stouffer's.
Oh,
My mother didn't like to cook, and was not a spectacular cook. She had a couple of nice dishes, but Dad was a food broker, and one of our lines was Stouffer's. So
ah,
down in the basement were two or three commercial freezers, and dinner was just send someone downstairs and come back with some Stouffer's. Went over to visit my mom and sister-in-law one time when I was in Atlanta, long after we'd moved to California, and my sister had a new boyfriend, and he said, um, "I understand we're going to have one of your favorite meals from your mother." And I looked at my sister, who was standing behind him, and she shrugged her shoulders because she didn't know what our favorite meal was either. Well, it turned out it was four of those, for two macaroni and cheese type things from
oh,
Stouffer's.
I've never had their food. I don't eat stuff that has pretty packaging.
Yeah,
I like to
it's
cook it.
of the prepackaged stuff. Stouffer's is good. In fact, if you've ever eaten in a Stouffer's restaurant,
No,
you're eating the restaurant sizes of
oh,
frozen Stouffer's.
I'll have to
Uh,
try it.
it's really good. I'm not sure I can tell the difference, but anyway, it turned out our favorite dish was four lasagna. Pardon me, it was four lasagnas, those individual packages laid out in a baking dish, and then the cracks were covered with cheddar cheese, I think. So when it melted, you couldn't tell that it was four separate frozen things. So that was our giggling point all through dinner, that this guy said, "Oh, I can see why you like this. This is sure good." And I'd look over at my mother, and she'd glare at me like not a
Don't
single
you dare.
word.
Yeah.
I felt like, if you want seconds, there's more in the basement.
Geez. Yeah. That would, and you already had trouble with your mom and Santa, so that would have been a bad idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I'm cooking, yeah, I'm in there thinking, okay, this is exactly the way my mom did it. I learned, from her and from my grandma. I've been cooking all my life. I love it. And then it occurred to me that this year I said, I'm not making yams. I like yams as long as they're unsullied. Cook them, bake,
Mhm.
put maybe a little butter, a little salt and pepper. But the minute you put syrup, brown sugar, marshmallows on a yam, you have committed murder. I'm not eating that stuff. This year, no yams. We did acorn squash instead. It was delicious.
Well, I'm happy for you. Ours was good. And oddly enough, this year, nobody had turkey. It was
Oh,
on the menu, but
oh,
Gigi and our son, our youngest Tony, had prime rib, and some of the traditional stuff, was there. And I had, I think it was halibut, it was some sort of fish in a crust. It was about as good as fish can get. But I did feel when we left, I'm not a huge turkey fan. It's once a year is plenty, and I want plenty of gravy on it and stuff to
yeah.
moisten
Gotta
it
have
up.
gravy. Yep.
but it was excellent. Although I had a little twinge of guilt because at Thanksgiving you're just sort of supposed to eat turkey.
Well, yeah, and a little bit of cranberry as long as it's
Oh
not
yeah,
can and has those, rims around
the
the tip.
rings. Yeah.
I don't get that stuff at all, but it was nice. Thanksgiving was nice, and now I have to put everything away and get ready for Christmas. And this is the time of year when I go, I don't want to. I just want to leave my stuff up and just, keep on going with October and November and pretend like that's all the way to January. But of course, I can't do that. But it was nice, and I think everybody I know had a terrific Thanksgiving, which is good. I didn't hear any awful tales or, murders or going to the hospital because they ate something stupid. So I think everybody was okay this year.
Or political fights.
No political fights.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. So let's talk about, yeah, and we are in Gigi's plan. I really want people to know what her plan was and how did she come up with this? Because this was quite a while back.
Probably I wasn't there. In that chapter, by the way, shows what a great salesperson I am. I was courting Gigi when I wrote when I wrote the book, and when I got to that chapter, she had told me in a casual conversation at somebody else's party about how she learned a lesson in selling and so on. So I took that. But as you notice, if you go through the book, she's the only name mentioned in the title. That was called Ben Gay is trying to get Gigi Ronzoni's attention because he's in love with her and he's going to stalk her till he gets her. And
Does she know this? Because if she didn't, she does now.
yeah, so if I wasn't known as a good salesperson in the beginning, my friends kid me about, they'll say, how did you get together and why do you put up with him and so on. And somebody will always say, read Gigi's plan A and plan B interview. Not only did he write about her to get her, he's followed that lesson himself. And I have. Some of my biggest and best clients follow Gigi's plan A and B, whether I tell them that's the title or not, but it follows along the same lines. Here's what the magic was. Gigi is a very quiet, shy person till she gets to know you. She's the type who could, if she weren't so pretty, could be in a room and nobody would notice her. She doesn't want to be noticed. She doesn't wear bright clothing and so on. She likes to just be the second fiddle. And when she was growing up, they all used to call her the sweater holder because when they went to the fair or something, they all wanted to ride the wild mouse and the Ferris wheel, and Gigi would always say, I'll hold your coats. And so they're up whirling around on the whatever machine, and you could always spot Gigi, I'm told, standing at the bottom with 5 coats over her arm, waiting for them to come back down. So she's not your typical hard charging salesperson, but she was very good at real estate, did quite well. But she wasn't one of those hard bitten real estate people or real estate ladies. Sometimes you want to see how tough a woman can be, get her a real estate license. And somebody in her office, a gentleman, said to her one day, how much money is there in being a tour guide exactly? And she said, I don't know. I've never been a tour guide. He said, oh yeah, you are almost every day. When it's you're up, somebody walks in, and we live in a country area, so we draw San Francisco and Sacramento and some of the bigger areas around us. They want to come up and see how the hillbillies live and tour our Christmas tree farms and pick our apples and so on. And they're just fascinated by the geography. And it is quite pretty. We're in the foothills of the Sierras, right down the hill from Lake Tahoe. And so they come in, well, we'd like to look at some houses. Fine, bang, they're in the car driving around for the rest of the day. And more often than not, they said, well, we'll get back to you. We really appreciate it. And of course, that'd be the last she ever saw them. So this gentleman said, you got to qualify them up front, not prejudge, but you got to qualify them up front. Because a lot of these people, and I think I mentioned it in that chapter, they don't have enough money to put gas in their car to get back home. And you're showing them in those days, $200,000, $300,000 homes. Now they'd be knocking on $1 million minimum. And you're driving around the countryside and there's no clothes on earth. First of all, there's no clothes on earth that will sell a lady a home she doesn't want. So that's a one little problem in real estate. And then there's no clothes on earth that will sell someone or close someone on buying a house they can't afford, can't underline, because that's a condition, not an objection. So you got to find out which one it was. So Gigi sat down and it was finished before I heard it and wrote it down in the book, but I think I got it almost word for word. She would sit down with people as they came in and lure them over to her desk, sit them down and say, okay, what are we doing today? What are we up to? And I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of it. Get to know them because she's so sweet and everybody instantly loves her. And they would say, well, we're looking at houses, we're thinking about moving in the area and so on. She says, all right, I've got 2 ways we can approach this. One, I need some information from you. And then she get out a little form she had put together from other bits and pieces of other qualification type forms. How many bedrooms do you want? Do you have to be near a school? If so, high school, grammar school, middle school, what? And sort of get the outline of what they were looking for so they don't spend time looking at things. You can't show, there is no 2-bedroom house on earth I would buy, for instance. I like 3 bedrooms, one for family, one extra one for family, one extra one for guests. Even if it's never used, I just feel better. And we've had, currently we have 5 bedrooms, which is 2 more than we need, but there's some parameters for houses that I'm willing to look at. And then on top of that, Gigi has the final vote. Any man who's semi-intelligent will know that the woman picks the house. And he may have a hand in picking the budget, but she picks the house. So she would fill out the little thing. And then when she had the information she needed, she said, now, there are 2 ways we can work together. I see what you want to look at, and I can give you a list of addresses. Back then, they didn't, when she first developed this, they didn't have GPS and all that. She said, give them a map. But here you can go out and look at some houses that fit your broad parameters. And if you see anything you like, call me, come back to the office, whatever, and I'll help you with the paperwork and making an offer and everything. Or if for some reason you bump into some other realtor out there who's maybe got one of the listings and you wind up doing business with them, no hard feelings. But you'll be on your own wandering around in El Dorado County. And invariably, she said, they will say, well, what's plan B? She said, well, plan B is I get up from this desk because I know you're qualified from the information you've already given me. And I take you around to the houses. I know the area better. And you will do business with me, but that's good news because I'll find your house. I probably know the sellers. And I'll find your moving company because I've already found them. If you need to use one locally, I've got them under contract. And your financing, I have 2 or 3 people that I highly recommend that will treat you right because they're friends of mine, and I'm one of their clients. And at the title company, it's not some mystery. You have to swing in at the last minute and sign some stuff. But basically, at the title company, all I have to do is say, hi, this is Gigi, and your program is underway. So there are some advantages in doing business with me. Therefore, do you want plan A, where you wander around, or plan B, where I take you by the hand and guide you through this frightening process? And invariably, they would say, plan B, please. And she said, fine. The only thing I require to institute plan B is that you commit to working with me. The house you buy in this area will be sold through me, and at least as one of the agents, if there's a selling agent already or whatever. And is it fair enough? Yep. She'd spin the paper around and say, sign here. Doesn't obligate you to anything other than buying through me. And invariably they would sign it and off they would go. Now you have a serious buyer and you know what they're looking for. And I have that phrase I made up years ago. People buy from people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe. Got added a few years later. You now have them feeling safe. Mother is going to take them through the harrowing experience of buying a piece of real estate in an area they don't know from people they've never dealt with. But that's okay because Gigi has my hand. And on that basis, her closing rate shot up dramatically and her wasted time went to almost nothing. Because you've made this, and there's a subtlety in here that I didn't even put in the book because frankly, I hadn't thought of it till I taught from that chapter several times. The other thing that's going on besides qualification is a alternate choice close. But they have an option of not buying from you, not dealing with you, or buying from you under some condition. So what we're saying to them is, you're going to be a customer. What kind of customer do you want to be? A wandering generality driving through the countryside, hoping something jumps out of the bushes at you, or a meaningful, specific customer? But either way, I'm going to take care of you and do business with you. So when they say plan B, as most did, and some, she said, saved her a great deal of time. So we're just sort of looking and we don't have anything in mind and we'd have to sell our house. Fantastic. Here's a list of 10 places you ought to go look at. And here's a map to find them. And she'd circle them on the map and send them off. But what you'd really said is, are you going to buy a house? And if so, do you understand you buy it from me?
Right.
And so they haven't even seen a house yet, but they've agreed they are a customer or a client of hers. So it saved an enormous amount of time and got commitments in that you're driving around with a paid prospect or a paid customer before they see the house. Now we're just down to finding the house. It was done to me in the house we live in now, and it's guest house. And it was done to me. I called a lady friend before I knew Gigi and said to her, she said to me, what are you looking for? We just moved to the area. And I said, well, this is sort of goofy. But I've always wanted, since I stayed in one at Lake Lanier in Atlanta, I've always wanted an A-frame. And Buckminster Fuller is a dear friend of mine, has worked with me in seminars, and I've always wanted a dome home because he designed or figured out that a dome was a perfect thing for a house. Turned out not to be true, but he thought it
have
was.
No resale. Nobody wants those darn things.
So I said, an A-frame or a dome house. Jan Dallin was her name. Jan called me back probably later that day, no later than the next day, and said, Ben, I've got your house. And I said, okay. She says, meet me at, and I drove to the address she gave me. There was 10 acres on a hill, and right on top of the hill was a dome house, brown shingle dome house, and on 5 sides of it, over the front door, over the back door, over 3 of the bedrooms, were A-frames. They were mainly just decorative to let light in, but nevertheless, it had 5 A-frames attached to or built into a dome house. And she said, you moved out here in the country, probably not to be in the suburbs like you've been in your whole life, and you wanted an A-frame dome house. There it is. And we walked through it, and it was interesting, more interesting when I walked through it than it was 2 years later after I'd lived in it a while. Bucky Fuller was gone by then, but I wanted to go to his grave and say, you lied to me. But it was what he sold me on, and it was what I told Jan, and it's exactly what she found. Jan didn't know about Gigi's plan A and B, but she was using it.
Right.
She went to plan B. And so when she drove me up the driveway, I mean, what are you going to say? You said you wanted an A-frame, you got 5, and you wanted a dome house. There it is. And you want some property around you. Here's 10 acres. An acre, by the way, to our city folk who are listening to this, is roughly a football field. So that's 10 football fields. And in the middle of it, on top of the hill, is the house I had described to her. That's a plan B sale. I have a client. Everyone who's listening to this has seen them on television. I won't name them because I don't name clients, and I also have friendly competitors of theirs, but they have a very famous person endorsing them, and they sell gold and silver as an investment, precious metals. And I've jumped the sales dramatically of 2 of the people in particular by putting them on Gigi's plan A, plan B. Early in the first conversation, they probably responded to a television ad or have been referred to by somebody who already does business with them. But early in the conversation, they are now trained to say, and are saying quite effectively, now before we get rolling, let's decide what type of client you're going to be. Is this a one-time transactional purchase? You heard you ought to have some gold, so you called to get some. Or are you on our serious inner circle plan where we begin building generational wealth on an ongoing basis?
Well,
What you really,
that's a
what
big difference between those 2 things.
well, one is give me your credit card and we'll send you some gold.
Right.
The other one is I put you in my inner circle and you hear about things long before the news or next television commercial or what have you. And when there's something, they do a thing where if you spend so much, you get so much free gold, where it gives you a kickback on your own purchase, but nevertheless, it can be substantial. They had one the other day who got $10,000 in free gold based on what he bought and the fact he was in the inner circle. And that doesn't fit saying to somebody on the phone for the first time, a one-time transactional buyer, and if you buy now, I'll give you $10,000 in free gold.
No.
Yeah, right. It
So
doesn't,
somebody
same
might
offer.
believe that, but they probably, you shouldn't. You shouldn't
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah. So but again, in addition to knowing whether to treat them as a one-time non-reoccurring purchase or an ongoing thing, and then we put them on dollar cost averaging where they invest the same amount of money at least every month. Dollar cost averaging is a proven thing. Warren Buffett is its biggest booster, and put them on the dollar cost averaging generational wealth thing, which, by the way, saves them 11 sales presentations a year, 12 in the second year,
Wow.
because we don't have to discuss it again and the value and so on. We already know that. We've already agreed we're building wealth for not only us, but our children and their children. And so next month, I don't have to wonder, unless you tell me not to. We're buying on your established account the amount we agreed upon. Again, they can reduce it if they want, but they tell me that mainly people call in at the last minute to increase their monthly thing, if either total or for at least that month. But they're in the inner circle generational wealth building program. And it's just an entirely different mental attitude than, hi, what's the price of gold today? I might want to buy some. That's transactional. And you either have the lowest price or you don't. And that really gets iffy because gold is a commodity. If I called 10 gold people today, I would be within $1 or $2 per ounce, no matter where I called. And the difference between the $1 or $2 is probably based on, I called one at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't get to the next one to 110 and the next one to 120. And the price changed in the meantime. But on dollar cost averaging, that's not one of your problems. But mainly it's locking in the cut when you you called to find out if you were going to buy gold. You quickly agreed that you were going to buy gold, but was it a one-time transactional event, or are you in the dollar cost averaging generational wealth program? But notice there was no yes or no. It's how are you going to buy the gold that you really hadn't decided to buy when you dialed the phone. You called to be sold. We just skipped over that. I also in the closers part 2, last chapter, page 257, I cover it in a thing called sales infiltration. That's one of my secrets. You and I have talked about that many times. I don't stand out in the yard trying to, banging on the windows, try and get in. I get in. That's assumed before you know that's any good news or bad news. I'm in. I'm talking about we and us and what we're going to do, and taking your temperature with a lot of fair enoughs. Is that fair enough? Is that fair enough? And we've discussed one time before, I have ridden into a multi-million-dollar continuing relationship through sales infiltration. I have ridden a relationship with a squirrel named Buddy to riches.
Okay, now you have to tell that story.
Yeah, well, I've told it before, but I don't believe everybody listens to every one of the things I say. I'm standing with some outside during a break with some employees, for lack of a better word, of this investment bankers investment program. And these guys are doing well. They wouldn't have been at this private meeting if they weren't making over $1 million a year, and some were making considerably more than that. But they still go through the normal things that everybody goes through. People didn't call back. People weren't there for the appointment that was agreed upon, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, well, at least we learned to a degree how to get around gatekeepers, because our boss, who's a good friend of mine, remain nameless, our boss, his gatekeeper, receptionist, assistant, whatever, is the hardest gatekeeper on earth to get past. So we're talking. And again, we're in one of those buildings where the center is wide open to the sky, 4 sides of wall, offices, and so on. And while we're talking, a squirrel comes down out of a tree, runs across the patio, climbs up on a railing that was there, runs down to the end of the railing and picks up a soda cracker that had been left there, and sits back and starts nibbling on it. I said, that's cute. Who's the squirrel? And they said, well, that's Buddy. I said, the squirrel has a name? Yes, he belongs to, and they refer to the tough gatekeeper lady. That's her squirrel. And she feeds him 2 or 3 times a day, and she just loves that squirrel. So when I came home back to the countryside, I went immediately to the feed store. I'd never been in a feed store before. And I said, do you have gourmet squirrel food? And they said, oh, yeah, shelf 6 or whatever. So I went over, and I picked it based on the most expensive. I figured there was a reason for that. And I bought 5 pounds of squirrel food, took it home, boxed it up, put it in a priority mail container, and sent it to Buddy the Squirrel, care of, company name, street address, Pasadena, California. And wait, of course, you can track it. So I knew when it got there. A couple of days later, phone rings. It's the nice lady. She says, Ben, Buddy got his feed. He loves it. No more soda crackers for Buddy. And we laughed and giggled about it. She said, how'd you know? I said, well, they told me you loved that squirrel. Its name was Buddy, and it was eating a soda cracker, which I don't think is nutritious enough for Buddy. And so she said, we laughed, and she said, well, thank you so much. That was so thoughtful of you. And by the way, anytime you need anything here or need to talk to anybody about anything, you call me. It's handled. And I don't really remember, but I doubt I invested $10, maybe 15 counting priority mail, $15 in Buddy the Squirrel and his food. And I've made, would have made most of it probably anyway, but have made millions of dollars in that relationship with that gentleman over many years. And it all came down to paying attention, feeding Buddy the Squirrel, sales infiltrating them, and offering him, when I first started, plan A or plan B. You want me to drop by
Right.
4 times a year and chat with your folks? You want me to dig in and get serious with the winners among them? Well, I want you to dig in and get serious with the winners, and I'll pay for that. He didn't know. He just picked plan B because he didn't know it was plan A, plan B, but nowhere in there was, do you want to do business with me at all or not?
Right.
Nowhere in Gigi's plan was, do you want to buy a house or not? If we get together and spend any significant amount of time together, you're buying. Oh, and by the way, that signed agreement, she didn't run it by a lawyer or anything. It's a gentleman's handshake agreement on paper. She said there were 3 or 4 times she thought, I guess I could use that because they bought from somebody else after I devoted time. But she said it's not worth it. And it's only happened 2 or 3 times out of dozens of sales. So, and then,
You were talking about her process, being a tour guide. I get that. And you see that with car dealerships. People don't
yep,
have gas money, but they're going to get in the biggest, most expensive car. They'll dress up nice and they'll go, oh, yeah, I'd like to take that one for a drive. They can't drive it. They can't even get a cab out of there, but they had a nice time. You see it go
got to
out.
drive around a big car.
That's
Might
right.
have even gone over to a friend's house and
It could
shown
be
off the car.
grocery store, who knows? And I think I've shared this with you about my house. I bought my house in between hurricanes. I'm right between, I'm equidistant between Katrina and Rita, and we got clobbered. We got clobbered both times. And I was in a rent house. I'd sold my house and had been looking, but I'm one of those people. I need to be in the house. I need to know what it feels like. If it has odd shaped rooms, I'm instantly uneasy. If something is not, if it doesn't sit right, I can't be in the house. It's just, I'm one of those people. I can tell when something's a half a millimeter off. So you
Me
can
too. I
imagine.
get up and straighten pictures
Yeah, me too.
in the middle of
I've tried to do that in hotel rooms and they're stapled to the wall, but it's crooked. Somebody fix this. But I was 80 miles away. I was working, and this real estate agent that I had been working with, she knew what I was not going to accept. I didn't want dark paneling. I didn't want houses smack on top of me. I didn't want to be close to a highway. I wanted to be out in the country. I needed windows. I needed trees. I needed squirrels. And you talk about Buddy, I've got squirrels out there. And no HOA. That was never going to happen. You're not going to put me in an HOA house. I got a phone call and she was quiet. She said, Denise, this house just came up today. They want out. They want out bad to Colorado. They don't want to live in Hurricane Alley anymore. She said, it's available today. It hasn't really hit anywhere, but she said, you want this house. I bought it sight unseen. She sent me, the pictures of it. She told me exactly how I was going to feel when I walked in this house. I signed the documents at 9 o'clock at night. She waited, brought me over here at 9:30 at night, and I said, "Yep, it's mine, mine." But I trusted her.
there you go. And with whom you feel safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She knew exactly what I wanted. And when she said with no hesitation at all, Denise, you want this house, I went, okay. I believed her. And I'm very happy in this house. It was a year old at the time. So it was a brand new house. I mean, it had been lived in maybe a year. It's my house. But she was right. She nailed it for me.
That's it. And it's such a pleasure to deal with someone like that. It doesn't come up every few minutes because I
No,
don't like moving every few minutes. But the few times it's come up, I've tried to use. I've been using Jan Dowland today, but she passed away.
no.
But she sold us the house that we're in, and the guest house, and the dome house before it. And I had just heard of her and met her, when we were selling our home in Marin County. And before I could hook up with her and have her do that one, even though it was 136 miles away, somebody else came up, made us a cash offer on the spot. So it was sold before I ever discussed it with her. But once you find somebody you know, like, and trust, and with whom you feel safe, it's not hard for them to get you on plan A or plan B. And I'll tell you two cute stories in Marin County. Big house, 156 acres surrounding it, and that was surrounded by San Francisco Bay, up on top of a hill. Lovely home. It depends on how you count, but 5 bedrooms and an office and a game room the size of a 2-car garage. I know that because it was over a 2-car garage, and with a full bar, and we installed a Brunswick Championship pool table and so on. It was just really luxurious and nice. I bought it without ever going in it because Marcia, who was alive at the time, my first wife, and I had discussed with the realtor exactly what we wanted. And his name was Dave Shelton, and Dave called me up one day, said, I got your house, sort of like your friend.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't hesitate. She knew this was my house.
Yeah. Dave said, I've got it. And he knew we did a lot of entertaining in those days. He said, you could entertain a small army in this house and a magnificent view, and you'll be the talk of the town to anyone who ever drives past it and looks up the hill and so on. So we bought, I said, how much? And he told me whatever it was at the time. And I said, fine. He said, you want to negotiate? I said, is that a fair price? He said, no, it's fair. Probably get 10,000 knocked off if we argued about it for 2 weeks or something. I said, no, let's take it. Okay. Same house, fast forward 6 months go by, I'm guessing. I'm out coming back from a dirt bike riding thing that I used to do with a dear friend of mine almost every weekend. Pull into this gas station, which is by the yacht harbor, which is beneath the house. And I look up at the house. It's couple hundred yards away and up on top of a hill. But I looked up at the house, and I really wasn't talking to him. I was talking to myself, covered with mud on a Yamaha 125. It wasn't like the king had arrived on his motorbike. It was a serious dirt bike, and I had all the dirt to prove it. So, and I got gas at this station on a regular basis, but without a helmet and mud, and in a Cadillac, not on a Yamaha 125. So I said out loud to myself, really, God, what a beautiful house. Because that was, except from the bay, which was even prettier, it was just a beautiful view of the house and the land around it and everything. I said, God, what a beautiful house. And he said, guy would come out to take my credit card, I guess, said, yeah. And the guy, a crooked son of a bitch who lives in it, stole every dollar he ever made. I said, wow, who is he? He says, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
It was
Well,
envy.
Ben, shame on you. Bad
It was
Ben.
envy of
Yeah.
somebody in a big house.
Oh, that is just too bad. But that's how people get rumors started. And yeah, it's amazing how these things happen. And listen, and you talk about, you paid the price they wanted. I asked her, I said, what was the price? Which I thought was pretty fair. I'd looked at a bunch of houses at that point, and I was getting really, really irritated. I just didn't like any of them. They were overpriced. I thought they were overpriced for what I thought they should be worth, because they were what I wanted. And she told me what the price was, and I said, do I offer fair, do I offer straight up full price? She said, yes. She said, I'm going to tell you why, because we're already getting calls from New Orleans and from Texas. Companies they're trying to find ways to house their executives because they were wiped out. That house is going to be gone by midnight. And she was right. I mean, the next couple of days she was fielding calls. I hadn't moved into the house. It was Thanksgiving week. And some guy comes, there's a courtyard in the front yard, and he comes pounding at my kitchen window, of all things. And I'm not real friendly. I'm really not.
I'm not from anybody knocking on my kitchen window.
No, and the window was open. I was cooking. You could smell the turkey was cooking. And he said, do you live in this house? I said, do I look like I'm inside the house? And he said, well, I just want to know if it's for sale. And I said, go away. I'm not going to even offer you a drumstick. Just go away. You've already irritated me. Well, I want this house. well, that's just too bad. And we had words. And he finally went away, but he was just bound and determined that this house was still out there on the internet and he could buy it. Well, no, you can't. So,
But it said,
but it said, that's right. And I had to run him out. It's like, dude, just go away. And listen, if you'd come to the front door, you would see that there's a sign on there that says, do not knock or ring the doorbell. So you bypass that. It's the only reason you're still standing, but get off of my property. So he did. But she was right. We paid full price. There was no quid. They accepted it the next morning. It was done. I really believe if I had tried to say, oh, let's take it down 10,000, I wouldn't be in this home.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's right, trust your gut.
Yeah.
The house that we currently live in and the guest quarters came about. We were renting across the street between houses. Wait, and Gigi and I had just gotten married, so we're looking for what's next, and I didn't want to go till I knew what Gigi really liked. I didn't want to buy something, so we rented, and a mile away was her getting elderly mother, who every time Gigi called, and she didn't answer the phone, we had to hop in the car and drive a mile and make sure she was all right. Invariably, she was taking a bath and couldn't get to the phone or whatever, or wasn't there at all. I didn't know that she wasn't allowed to leave home without notifying Gigi. So having made 8 or 10 of those trips, I was starting to look. Well, right across the street from the house we were renting was this lovely home, 2-story, 4 bedrooms. Like one of them I use as a personal office, but 4 bedrooms, I guess. And across its driveway, a 2-bedroom granny flat, I guess is what you'd call it now. But my first house wasn't as nice or as big, with a swimming pool and everything. So I looked over and I said to Gigi, I said, that house solves our problem. When your mother didn't answer the phone, you walk across the driveway and make sure she's okay. And it's nicer than her house, not as historic and lovely and all, but it's nicer than her home. And a swimming pool that was set up for a handicapped person, walk-in ramps and all, because the previous owner's father lived there, and so on. And she said, well, yeah. And I said, have you ever been in it? Because she wasn't a realtor anymore, but she'd been a realtor. And she said, yeah, I was in it when they were building it. And both houses are lovely. I said, do you like them both? And she said, oh, yeah, they're really nice. So I'd never been in either house, although we lived directly across the street. And I called our realtor and said, there's a house, houses that I want for Gigi. I said, get us a fair price and write it up. And that's what plan A, plan B, and someone you trust and feel comfortable with, feel safe with, does for you. He said, fine. And before the day, and the house wasn't for sale, by the way, the houses were not for sale. But he said, I've got somebody who'd like to buy the house at a fair price. And she said, well, I've been thinking about it. My dad passed away. I don't really need the guest house. He said, how much you want? He said it. She said it. And my realtor said it was a fair price, Ben. I could have haggled with her and so on, but it was a fair price, about what I would think it would go for, net go for, not be listed originally, but go for. I said, write it up. Just write it up. So the first time I had ever been inside that house was, we already owned it.
Same here. And people say, Denise, were you comfortable with that? Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. Especially
Because
if
I
you're dealing
trusted.
with, the area.
I
You live in
did.
a nice area, as do you. You know the area, the realtor who knows it. And by happenstance, my wife had been in it when it was being built, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years before. She was happy with it. And the guy told me, he says, you haven't even been in it. I said, I haven't been in the last 3 houses I bought. I'm buying the reputation of people. Plan
Exactly.
A, plan B. And
Exactly.
if you ever screw me, you'll discover that was a huge mistake. I will be your best friend. I will refer people to you. I will tell your story all over the country, etc. Right up until I walk into a house that isn't what you told me it was. Then we have an entirely different game plan. He says, got it.
Exactly.
I'm
And
clear on that.
right. And this is, I know we're talking a lot about real estate and our personal stories, but there's a point to these stories. The point is that when you connect with people, when you do your best by them, yeah, you're selling something. That's your job. You're supposed to be selling something. But when you absolutely connect with them and you listen and you understand what it is that they need and you give them options on how to work with you, that's not just connecting, that's networking, and it can build for
Yeah.
years, years and years and years, which is really, as salespeople, what we want.
I've bought, as I've told you in the past, to give away mainly, but I bought and or leased over 600 luxury automobiles, Cadillacs, Lincolns, Stutz, Bearcats, Rolls Royces, etc., mainly as contest prizes. All of them, until the last few years where we don't do that anymore, were bought from two salespeople, grand total. One in Marin County, at Marin Bay, Lincoln Mercury, Herc's place. Oddly enough, you were fascinated by, I guess, his name, but Herc was the guy. And then a Cadillac dealer when we moved up to this area in Sacramento, about 300 cars each. And I bought all 600 from Herc, but he retired, sold the dealership, and so on. Because once you find somebody that you know, like, and trust, I make them vice presidents of car buying, or vice presidents of real estate, or vice president of whatever the category is. I'm looking for something. You can get the product anywhere. I mean,
Right.
the world is
Yeah.
not short on cars.
Houses.
So what I'm
Right.
looking for is the person. The car is secondary. The house is secondary. The Taylor is secondary. Everything is secondary to, do I know, like, and trust you? And then I'm smart enough to put you on either plan A or plan B if you're a customer. And plan B is my very, very favorite, because now I have infiltrated them. We're on the same team. We're doing the same thing. We're looking out for each other. And if you do well, I'll do well. So it's my job to make sure you do well.
I don't know if we've talked about this, Ben. It's just kind of a thought bubble popped in over my head while you were talking about that. But referrals, and I'm not talking about affiliate marketing, although there's certainly a place for affiliate marketing.
Sure.
Referrals. My clients tend to come, I'm not going to say 100%, but it's darn close, from referrals from people who have done business with me, or, and I've always found this fascinating, people who have never done business with me. They've never even spoken with me, but they know me. They know the work I do. They know my reputation.
Yeah,
They will refer. So it
absolutely.
happens quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm forever being asked by, these people who are going to have some amazing new program where they get me more leads than I can handle, and so on. I said, I'm fine. I don't need any more leads. Well, how do you get your new customers? I said, well, I rarely have an opening, but when I do, I get it through referrals. Well, where do you run your ads? I haven't run an ad in 30 years.
Me
I tr-
either. I
I
don't
trade
ever
off
run
my
ads.
reputation.
Yep,
Yeah,
same thing. And I've had people say, "Well, Denise, how do you build your business without Google ads or Facebook ads?" Which is all fairly new since I started 20 years ago. But it's always been word of mouth, reputation, referrals, always. I don't pay people to run ads for me. I probably should, because I have a new thing coming up that I may run some, quick Facebook or LinkedIn ads, but it's not going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's just not. But
well,
yeah, I get it. Word of mouth, referrals, be who you said you were going to be, and keep that connection open.
young and or new salespeople, that you can be 70 and still a new salesperson, don't want to hear that. And frankly, it's easier for you and me to talk about it because we've been at our businesses, our respective businesses for some time. So
Wow.
we build up referral business. But the good news is, just like pedaling a bike to the top of the hill, you then get to ride all the way down without touching the pedals or anything, trading on. We make a very good living on any one of 35 books that I've written. And I haven't written it under my name. I've ghostwritten the book, did one last month, finished one last month. But
Oh, I
under
need you
my
to
name,
ghostwrite mine. You said you were going to do the forward for my book. Can you write the book too?
no,
Ah,
because I don't want to charge you what I would charge. And I despise writing, despise until the first sentence is written, which is the last sentence in the book.
right. You
But
told me
then,
that.
yeah, but then the first sentence is like pulling teeth. But once I get rolling, it's addictive. I can't wait to get to the computer to write some more. Uh, but and with the forwards, frequently I say to someone, I'm not going to have time to do your book justice, and you know your material far better than I do. So you write the forward and send it to me, and I'll Benize it. I'm
Yeah,
not going to put it.
well, you told me that once. I was like, that's exactly what happens when you leave a job and you say, well, write me a reference. And I'll say, oh, write it, put it on my desk, I'll sign it. All right. Because it's going to be glowing. It's
And
going to be lyrical.
you rise to godlike stature when you get to write it.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
writing
we're
about me.
nearing the end, and that's your
We are.
job to tell me. However, does the new shift in your station, for lack of a better word, affect our listeners at all, or does life just
No,
go on?
life just goes on. I'm moving from Blog Talk Radio for, God, so many reasons. And I'll be moving to Hello Audio again for so many reasons, but no, everything stays the same. On Apple, Audible, Stitcher, it's everywhere. It's not going to go away.
Good.
Okay, so tell me, and I know we've got about 4 or 5 more minutes. Where can people find you? Mostly because we're talking about the sales Bibles, the closers. I really am hoping that as people listen to us, they buy at least one and two and have those books cracked open while we're talking, because I always mention what chapter we're in. So where can people find those?
Go to store. This is special pricing, free shipping, still has our unconditional lifetime money back guarantee. And they bring them to me, different company, but they bring them to me for signing and dating. So nothing changes. Order by two, they go out the same day. After that, they go out the next day. You go to stores, stores dot ebay dot com, com / and this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS. And they will bring me your books. I'll sign them, date them, and they'll be off to you that day. And as I said, lifetime money back guarantee. And when you go to that thing, up will come other things that we offer, other books and so on. But as Denise said, at least get parts 1 and 2.
Those are the ones that I'm constant. Well, number two, part two is the one that I'm always in. They sit here literally to the right of my desk. I don't even have to get out of my chair. I can reach over and grab one or both of them. Tell people with your email address so they can contact you about your mentoring program.
Yeah, I do a mentoring program similar to what Dr. Napoleon Hill did for me. And he helped me design it. And then before we could launch it, he passed away. But if you'd like to know about that, just shoot me an email to B as in Ben, F as in Frank, G as in gay, the number 3, BFG3 at DirectCon, short for Direct Connect, DirectCon as in November .net. And I'll get right back to you and send you the information on the mentoring program.
Got it.
Now tell them how they can reach you.
Oh, you can't throw a stick on the internet without hitting me or you as a result of this podcast, your partner in success radio.com. And, of course, what we're doing every Wednesday, the Closers Inner Circle podcast. I'm easy to find. It's mail, M-A-I-L, like mail, at yourofficeontheweb.com. And I'm mentioning that because Ben and I want to hear your questions about sales or even comments about what we're talking about. We're talking about squirrels today. You have a squirrel story? Share it with us. But we really do want to hear from you because listen, and I mentioned this the last time we were talking. One of the things that I'm going to be doing next week with my friend David Brown, that he's a businessman answer plan, is we're going to have a Zoom call where we're asking people. We really want to ask you if you're a new podcaster, you want to be a podcaster, you want to be a guest. What is it that you really want to know? There's a lot of a lot of people putting out terrific, really terrific courses and a lot of information out there. But I have a sneaky suspicion that some of it is overwhelming. It really is. I mean, I know practically everything there is to know about podcasting at this point. And I read some of these and go, I think you're confusing people. You're not asking them what they really want, what they really need, what is consuming them, what are they afraid of. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. But that page will go up, I think today or tomorrow, but it'll be out there on social media. So everybody just find us, look for us, go to yourpartnerinsuccessradio.com. You can find us on Audible, Stitcher, anywhere. It's never going to change. You're still going to find us. And Ben, we've got one more minute. What are we talking about next week?
Well, I didn't think you were going to ask, but I just picked it out and put the book away. So let me get it out. It is Save as Much as You Want, starting on page 71 in the Closers Part 2.
Save as much as you want. Okay, got it. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. Ben, thank you. Give Gigi my love.
I will. And our love to you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.